We got CNN. Good old trusty CNN. Facebook tried to punt the Trump decision that backfired. It's an interesting take. They say the Facebook Oversight Board was designed to make some of Facebook's most difficult decisions for the company. But on Wednesday, the board put one of the biggest dilemmas facing the platform back on Facebook and company CEO Mark Zuckerberg. The board said Facebook was right to suspend Trump in the immediate aftermath of the insurrection. But Facebook couldn't just make the suspension indefinite with no actual rule on its book. So basically, everybody was waiting for this huge moment. Was this supposedly independent body going to say Donald Trump should be allowed back on? Instead, they were like, well, I mean, Mark, you decide. So there's no real point to having them. We knew this was going to be the case. We know that. Let me just slow down. Is anyone really surprised? I'm surprised people are like, well, this is crazy. A sitting president was banned. Yeah, he was banned 4 months ago. What are you talking about? How is this news?
Yeah, I mean, did anyone really expect this Facebook oversight board staffed entirely by anti-Trump figures, people who compared Trump to Hitler in one case, was ever going to come to any other conclusion? Of course they were going to uphold the ban. And what they've done is they've essentially passed the buck back to Facebook saying, well, in 6 months you have to make a final decision. It's in your court now. So
Facebook already made their final decision.
Yeah.
The oversight board was supposed to be the special thing, but I just love how stupid so many people are. When they were like, first of all, the journalists who were like, oh no, what if they overturn Trump's ban? Oh geez. But then you have these GOP guys, these congressmen and women who are like, I can't believe they made this decision. We got to break up these companies. It's all meaningless. It's a big meaningless waste of our time.
Yeah, what's the GOP going to do at the national level? They don't hold power. When they did hold power, they didn't do much about it. I will say the Trump administration was on the verge of doing something about it in the final year, but the final year was too late. They should have acted 2017, 2018 when people started getting banned from these platforms. The only hope on a political level now is at the state level. And, Texas has an interesting bill. Florida has a could be worse bill, I guess.
Is it better than nothing?
It's better than nothing. It does impose some transparency requirements on the tech companies, which, unlike the rest of the bill, can actually be enforced. But the Texas bill actually is very interesting, and Senate Bill 12 in Texas, that's worth taking a look at.
What is that going to do?
So unlike the Florida bill, the Texas bill has a general provision against viewpoint-based censorship that doesn't mention the word common carrier or public accommodation, which are the two laws you can use to regulate businesses and restrict who they can and cannot deny service to. But it functions in much the same way. And the reason why that's important is because unless there are only a few legal routes, and I'll preface it by saying I'm not a lawyer, but there's only a few legal routes you can go to tell a business who they can and cannot deny service to, or whose speech they can and cannot host, because otherwise they'll just say, well, we're businesses. Businesses are considered persons by U.S. law. Therefore, we have First Amendment rights to host the viewpoint we want and to censor the viewpoints we want. But there are certain types of businesses that can't do that. Common carriers have to provide access to everyone on a reasonable, non-discriminatory basis. Public accommodations have to do the same under civil rights law. There are also state laws like California's UNRRA law, which is very wide-ranging and has actually been used in viewpoint discrimination cases successfully to say, no, businesses can't exclude people. Like even small businesses can't exclude.
The UNRRA law, is that what you said?
The UNRRA law. That's a California law.
Right. I remember talking about that book. Can you break it down for us?
So it's like a wider ranging version of like the civil rights law. You can't discriminate based on like a wide range of categories, and courts in California have interpreted that to extend to viewpoint. So
really?
Businesses that try to exclude like political extremists from their property have been shot down in the courts. The courts have said that you can't do that. Under the California Constitution as well, there was a very famous case in the 1980s, and this isn't UNRRA, this is their constitution, but there was a famous case in the 80s called Pruneyard v. Robbins, and that was a shopping mall that was taken to court because it didn't allow political activism on their property. And the court said, well, under California law, under the California Constitution, shopping malls have to allow political activism on their property. So if California can do all those things, there's no reason why Texas can't do it, Florida can't do it, any red state can't do it to the tech companies.
Can't you just sue based on California law then to get your account reinstated, or what?
Well, this is the thing. This has been tried before. The problem that all these state laws will run into is well, first of all, that didn't apply to tech companies. You'd have to write it and specifically apply to tech companies. The other problem, of course, is Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which is the law that says tech companies can censor a wide range of content, that they're not liable for user speech, and that only applies to tech companies. It doesn't apply to shopping malls. Man,
talk about one of the stupidest things. I can't blame the government, the politicians at the time necessarily, because they had no idea what they were dealing with, and to a certain degree it made sense. But a lot of people don't realize. I hear this all the time when people are like, they're a publisher now. They're a publisher. It's like, no, that's not what the law means. It's not how it works. Like the New York Times, you can't sue them for the comments. But there are a bunch of really important points to be made. Like when Twitter publishes those little blurbs and news things, yeah, that is Twitter speech. That's Twitter making a statement. Everyone's a publisher if you have a website, even Twitter. But it doesn't. It's actionable when Twitter says something, not when one of their users says something.
Yeah, well, what blows my mind, I've said this before, is that Wikipedia enjoys the protection of Section 230. I mean,
how though? That makes no sense to me.
Wikipedia says it's an interactive computer service, just like Facebook and Twitter, and it provides a forum for all these anonymous editors to make these articles. But the function of Wikipedia is clearly a traditional publisher. It brands itself as an encyclopedia,
and it says on every article from Wikipedia, not from Joe Bob Jr.
Precisely, and if the Encyclopedia Britannica published in its paper encyclopedia, far less influential than Wikipedia these days, if they defamed someone, they'd be held liable for that. But Wikipedia defames people all the time. It's the entire purpose of some of these articles about conservative figures, and yet conservatives can't sue them over that.
Why can't you sue them? Has anyone tried?
People have tried, yes, in various jurisdictions, but
have they ever made that argument that Wikipedia it is not? Look, it's we've talked about this before. We had Larry Sanger on, who was one of the co-founders, and we talked about how on Twitter it says at Libertarian Blue, it's your account, your words. Wikipedia says from Wikipedia. If you want to see what the users posted, you got to go to the what's it called? The history. You got to
history.
View the history of the article, and then you can see post made by this person. The article itself is not is an article published by Wikipedia. Period.
Yeah, but somehow Section 230 protects it, and it just shows how broken the law is, that it's protecting one of the most powerful publishers out there, the site that's at the top of nearly every Google search that can defame almost anyone.
Maybe the issue is people haven't sued properly. And the argument needs to be, show the judge a picture of the article where it says from Wikipedia and say, so long as Wikipedia purports that the words on this page that show no reference to any users or any individuals, it says all of this is from Wikipedia, then Wikipedia has asserted it has published this of its own volition.
I mean, I would like to see people try. I'm not a lawyer, but I assume the amount of people that Wikipedia has defamed, I'm amazed that
all of them, every single one.
If there was a possibility, even the slightest possibility, you could win a defamation case against them, I'm sure someone would have tried it by now. But I could be wrong. I hope to be proven wrong on that point.
I guess the issue is damages.
Yeah.
For proving damages is always particularly hard. But the main issue is that you need millions of dollars to do it. I've heard so many stories from prominent conservatives where they've been defamed a million and one ways. And it's like, well, I don't have any money, so I can't sue them. And that's all. That's it. Massive corporations can get away with it. Individuals can't really do much about it. That's why social media was so powerful, because it finally gave the individuals a chance to speak up and push back. Well, now that's being threatened. If you got the wrong opinions, you're gone.
Yeah, if the momentum of the alternative media and independent journalism that existed in 2015 and 2016 had been allowed to continue, who didn't have the rise of censorship, would have totally eclipsed CNN and the New York Times and Washington Post. That's why they had to kill it.
Kill,
the online freedom of speech.
I think people need to realize. I think people need to stop and take a look at some web archives. Look at what the internet was 15 years ago compared to what it is now. Look at YouTube 10 years ago compared to what it is now. And you're going to go, wow, I did not realize how much it changed.
Before Google bought YouTube?
No. I mean,
2006?
Yes. But I'm just saying.
Couldn't say anything, but it was pretty close.
I'm just saying the internet in general has become Disney. You know what I mean? Back in the day, the internet was nuts.
And Disney's become
crazy.
Trash.
The iron law of oligarchy. Eventually ruling elites inevitably emerge from any system.
Yeah, well, the issue, I suppose, is it's a tendency within any system, I suppose, for organization, right? So you look at movies. We used to make crazy movies. A lot of them would flop. Some would succeed. And you ended up with weird things like Groundhog Day. Amazing movie. I don't think it made blockbuster money. What happens is over time, people start realizing, it makes money, giant robots blowing up buildings and, cars exploding. So you get a bunch of Transformers movies with very little story, if any, because it transcends culture. So big explosions can be sold all over the world, but American culture with English speakers is harder to sell in foreign countries. You got to do a bunch of work. So they're like, just make it a bunch of explosions, little dialogue. And then what ends up happening is we get all movies that are just derivative,
Bland.
Remakes, bland. Yeah, lowest common denominator stuff.
The 5th, 6th, 7th Spider-Man remake. Okay, enough already.
Yeah. And now we're at the same place in the same way in the internet. For a long time, people just made whatever they want on the internet. It was a really weird place where people did weird things. And then big companies started to realize what really made money. They started to invest in only certain things. Then big companies didn't like the idea of fringe weirdos, started banning them. And now look at the kind of shows that are available to you on YouTube. You really need to think about this. Only a few years ago, you could go on YouTube and search for the most ridiculous thing, like, DMT, for instance. Now you do, and it's all like CNN, CBS, NBC. It's all just big mainstream corporations. It's like turn on the TV.
Yeah, we leaked the YouTube blacklist on this at Breitbart back in 2018. They have a literal list at YouTube that they call the controversial query blacklist. And it's just a bunch of political terms, and whenever they add a term to that blacklist, has thousands of entries, by the way. Whenever they add a term, it just reorders the search results so that it's CNN, BBC, and whatever, everything else you'd expect.
I was searching for Project Veritas recently because they put out that music video.
Oh yeah,
Oligarchy.
Yeah.
So I'm looking up Project Veritas, and I type in project, and I can see all the suggested posts. Like YouTube's like, it gives you suggestions as to what it thinks you're trying to type. And then as soon as I typed in VER, it just disappeared. All the suggestions were gone. And then it's like, they figured out where I'm going, and they don't like it. They're not going to autofill it for me. How ridiculous is that? Hoping that I just search for Project Ver and then get some random channel. Maybe it's a good idea to create a channel called Project Very.
For sure.
And then just talk about Project Veritas, and that's it.
Yeah.
Then YouTube will autofill Project Very. Project Verit.
Project Verit dot
Verita.
as. Project
Project
Verit dot
Verita.
as. Get it.
Dot as. No, just Project Verit, so that when people are searching for it, it autofills, and then people will click your channel instead.
Veritus with a U.
Verit. Well, no, it wouldn't. I
short.
suppose it would autofill that.
In 2008, I was really politically active on YouTube, just like screaming at the internet that we have the control now. Now that we have internet video, the president of the United States, president of Russia can do a video chat, and everyone can watch. You don't need Secret Service. We're in a new paradigm. And I was talking, and people were like lighting up, believing it. And so CNN wanted to get in on it, so they funded the CNN to YouTube debates. And for the first time in history, they took YouTubers' questions for the candidates. And it was the most, I asked about the Federal Reserve. I want to know why the banking establishment had co-opted our government. No. They had the most cookie cutter stuff, but they were like, look how we're part of, this is CNN, look how we're part of this new uprising, and then it took about 2 or 3 years. In my 2011, they'd completely co-opted the political conversation. Google bought it.
Yeah, they don't do anything like that anymore.
No, and then they don't even do it anymore. They realize
now they just ban the comments on the White House videos, and now YouTube's eliminating thumbs down for Joe Biden because nobody likes the guy.
Oh yeah, they love internet freedom and social media when it was helping elect Obama and helping do coups in the Middle East. But as soon as 2016 comes along and you get Brexit and Trump, everything changes. You go back to 2012, you will see articles in the wake of the Obama re-election like Facebook and the power of friendship. And its impact on the 2012 election. So they loved it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I think shows like this, and I mentioned this before, it functions as a pressure release valve for a lot of people who are frustrated. Right now there's a lot of people who are listening, hearing us talk about censorship, and it's making them feel good that their concerns are being addressed. But YouTube and Facebook and Twitter knows that this conversation likely won't result in anything meaningful. The Republicans right now, in response to the Trump announcement, are saying stupid things like, it's time to break up these big tech monopolies. And it's like, what?
not with 20th century.
What are you talking about? Facebook, the reason Facebook works is because everyone uses it. You can't break Facebook into 10 different Facebooks. Then what? All of a sudden, Ian and I aren't on the same network anymore? And then so how does it work? I suppose if they break them up and force them to go open source and like decentralized, but that would destroy the company outright. So it's not something that can be done. What needs to happen is regulation on the platform that allows speech. However, what's happening is there are some people that YouTube allows. And why is it that I see every day a YouTube channel get nuked for the stupidest reason or no reason at all? But we're allowed to keep doing the show. Why? Like I said, I think it's a pressure release valve. If they got rid of every single, channel, then you'd end up with a whole bunch of people losing it outright, feeling like they've been just booted out. They have nothing left, and they go nuts. But they need good old, milquetoast Timcast IRL so that people are like tuning in and hearing this and going, yeah, it's good. It's good to get the truth. And it is. But they also know that it's just enough to keep people calm.
Correct. And, if you step out of line even a little bit, they'll just ban you. So, there are some things everyone knows they can't say. They banned DeSantis. YouTube banned DeSantis because he held a COVID-19 roundtable with some of the signers of the Great Barrington Declaration.
They outright banned him?
I think it was a temporary suspension, I believe. But, there's a governor of a red state, just, who will probably run for president in 2024.
Yeah, well, look, I said on Twitter I think Trump shouldn't run because he's too hot. As soon as Trump pops his head up, every single uninitiated liberal is going to be screaming and banging their head on the wall, just freaking out. And if you have someone like DeSantis, they'll still smear him. They'll try, but DeSantis will not invoke the same kind of anger that people had when it was Trump. Well, however, I'll just say, I don't think a Republican can win. A lot of people are like, maybe the Republicans can win in 2022. And even I was saying it just the other day because libs have gone to sleep. I'm not confident because what's going to happen is a conservative from 10 years ago will never win an election for a few reasons. One, the modern Republican Party is more about Trump and populism than it was about establishment conservatism. But more importantly, if you even say half the things that the Democrats said, they'll call you far right and they'll suspend you or shadow ban you. So what's going to happen is a Republican might win in 2024, but this Republican's going to be basically Bernie Sanders. And then the Democrat's going to be, further left, a full-blown communist. Maybe not by 2024, but certainly in the next, 15 or 20 years. When all of our opinions are being filtered through the far left lens of Silicon Valley, conservatives get banned, and the remaining conservatives are the milquetoast centrist conservatives. And then 10 years after that, those people are fringe far right who are banned, and the conservatives are going to be socialist otherkin or something. That's the trend.
I mean, when we're talking about, lots of people say, the 2020 election was stolen, but in a sense it was, but it was done in the open by Silicon Valley censorship, which they didn't even try to hide the censorship. I mean, Breitbart News found out that Google was censoring us through Google's own analytics tools, so they didn't care that we knew.
How did that happen? What did they say?
So they introduced a major algorithm change around 6 months before the election. And right after that algorithm change, impressions and clicks on... Breitbart's visibility on Google search for Breitbart news links, it went straight off a cliff, went right down. So it was clearly something artificial. Happened to a bunch of other conservative sites as well. And that remained the case for right up until the election. Plus, you could search for the exact string of Breitbart News headlines in Google, and the link wouldn't come up.
Right. Same thing was happening to my other channels as well. And it wasn't until I talked about it on this show that one day people were like, oh, no, your channels are back. You would take the exact title of one of my videos and put it in Google, and it wouldn't come up. So something happened around, I think it was May of 2018, where was that when you noticed the algorithm shift?
It was a little bit later than that. I would say it was May of 2020.
2020.
Yeah, so around 6 months before the election.
In May of 2018, there was tons of people were talking about it. You could look in your analytics and check your recommendations, and you'd see just one day it went boom to went from 10% to 1%. And then people weren't getting any suggestions anymore for any political content that was deemed to be, just anti-democrat, anti-woke. And it's remarkable because back then I said Republicans were too stupid to deal with it. That's still true today. 3 years later, they are still not smart enough to save their own careers. And what's going to happen is by the time any modern, young, center-right conservative type gets into office, then the system it'll be too late. And you're not going to be able to get elected because the Republicans at that point are going to be socialists.
Well, I think I'm a little bit more optimistic because I think the internet freedom that existed before 2016, that red pilled a lot of people. And, those people have not forgotten. They're still out there, millions of people. And I think what people need to do is focus less on national elections and more on activism at the local level, at the precinct level, influencing their local Republican Party or their local Democrat Party, because that's where you can start change, from the bottom up. It's much less competitive there. You don't need thousands of votes. You need hundreds or dozens.
And just at the state level, get some
at the precinct level.
Yeah.
And you go from the precinct level to the county level to the state senate level to the state level.
Then why don't we just have why don't we start with a small town implementing these common carrier rules?
Well, no, with common carrier rules, you need the state. But to influence the state, you need to get involved at the precinct level.
Yeah.
So, for example, one of the bad things, I like the Texas tech bill, but one of the bad things Texas did recently, the Texas Republican Party, rather, was issue a motion taking the party off Gab.
Right.
Yeah, because of concerns about anti-Semitic hate speech or whatever. And Governor Abbott supported that. That was... It's kind of weird that, the Texas Republicans are saying, oh, we're going to support free speech with this bill, which hasn't passed yet, but we're also going to leave the only, free speech social network.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.